about what's changing. We're talking about how to prepare. All of this will be recorded. All of the slides will be shared after the fact. So make sure you're on that. A couple other things. CFRE, this is good for one credit. At the end of the session, we will drop a note in the chat. Excuse me, a survey. You'll complete the survey to attest to your attendance. We're not going to send you a certificate or anything, but if you ever get audited, we're there to back you up. If you have questions, throw them in the chat or the webinar or the Q&A function. We'll do our best. We may not get to them at the end of the day. We're always committed to ending on time for you all. We know you have lots of things going on. Good morning from Pasadena and Alabama and South Carolina and San Diego and Fort Myers and Berkeley and Austin. So much going on here. Here's the agenda. Intros. We'll do this very quickly. We'll talk about what happened in 2025. Boy, 2025 was the most eventful year for grant writing in a long time. We'll talk about some trends to watch in 2026. We'll talk about what do you actually need to do right now to start winning more funding this year. So hopefully you will walk away saying, I have a better understanding of what happened last year. I have a rough sense of what to expect in 2026, and there are some practical things that I will put into play, and I will win more money for my organization so we can do more of our important mission this year. And all of that will happen before 1 o'clock Eastern. So hang tight. Quick intro. My name is Patrick. I'm lucky to be the co-founder and co-CEO of FreeWill alongside my wonderful friend Jenny. This is what I look like with a full beard. Jenny's in Seattle. I'm currently in sunny Palo Alto, California, which is why I got to go to Marin yesterday, most often in Brooklyn of New York City. FreeWill is the #1 planned giving solution and estate planning solution in the United States, trusted by 2,300 nonprofits. Also, one of the leading providers of smart giving solution. That's things like QCDs and stock giving and donor advised funds. If you're interested, go check that out, please. Trusted by organizations like the American Diabetes Association, the Red Cross, Amnesty International, United Way, and so on and so forth, and seen in places like the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, et cetera, et cetera. But most of what you see is not done by me. We have a wonderful team of about 253 people across 5 countries, $13 billion raised nonprofits to date, over 6 centuries of combined fundraising experience and expertise, and 2026, happy 10th birthday to FreeWill. So all of you at FreeWill and previous FreeWill folks, happy birthday to us. So very exciting. All right, last things before we get started. We are so grateful you're here. I'm so grateful you're here. And so one of the things I get to do with the marketing budget that I get to control sometimes is give away some books to you. And we are going to give away one of my favorite books of the end of last year called The Lost Bookshop by E.B. Woods. It is a delightful book. It's a lot going on in the world. So why not just spend some time reading about European bookshops and adventures and romance that unfolds within them? So a lot of folks have read it. Sonia, Gemma, Christina, Helene loved it. Annalise says, great book, highly recommended. Aaron says, this has been on my list. Other folks have read it. All right, a lot of folks, big readers on this in this group, which I really appreciate. I'm a big reader. Make a note in the survey if you'd like a chance to get a copy, and we will send it to you. So, Lost Bookshop, super fun. 10 out of 10? I don't think so. 8.5 out of 10, and absolutely delightful? Yes. So that's my recommendation for Evie Woods and the Lost Bookshop. You can always buy it, by the way, at your local independent bookstore if you don't win it. But hang tight a couple days and we'll let you know if you won it. So how do you get a copy, by the way? Because a lot of folks are typing in the chat. At the end of the session, drop a note in the survey that you'd like a copy. That's how you go. All right, let's talk about how your week is going. Enough about me. Generally pretty positive, feeling generally okay. A little bit of tick up in anxiety. Are we going to war with Europe? I don't know. We'll figure that out. Check in next week to see where that lands. Otherwise, a little bit lower confidence in hitting our goals this year. This actually tends to be quite normal in January. We had a really strong end of year last week with Dr. James, who was unbelievable. And so if you talk to him this week, thank him again for last week's webinar. We had an incredible session. We also talked through some of the new data coming out about how strong end of year was, and it was very, very strong. So, just a huge shout out to all the fundraisers on the call. I mean, it's just unbelievable work ethic and focus and innovation that led 2025, I believe, to probably be the highest year in charitable giving ever. We'll get some official facts on that later this year. All right, let's talk about grants, right? So most of you are here to talk about grants, one of the largest sources of funding across the board. We will talk about federal, state, local, private, corporate grants today. So if any of those are something you are doing or thinking about or wish to be doing, you're in the right place, and we're so glad you're here. What happened in 2025? Boy, Lots of ground moved under our feet. 2025 included the federal funding freeze, the unfreeze. There were some delayed disbursements. There was the entire dismantling of USAID, which was quite sad to me. GrantStation's 2025 State of Grant Seeking report surveyed nonprofits between January and July to understand how they were adapting, and we'll talk about what that looks like in a moment. One third of nonprofits that they surveyed experienced funding reductions or cancellations. The median loss was $150,000 per organization. This is very significant. And success rates by funding source changed. So private foundations remain the most common source of support, but the folks winning those dropped by a little bit. Now, why is that? Didn't private foundations step up? Well, it turns out that a lot more people applied, right? So you had a lot more grants across the board. Modest decrease, increase in competition. A lot of folks pivoted towards more corporate and more private to offset a 12-point drop in federal grant success because a lot of these things just dropped off. Uh, what else happened? How did they respond, right? What did we do? We didn't sort of sit on our hands. I think one of the things that's happened since 2020 is that nonprofits have gotten more adaptable and they've recognized more often that the world is changing and they need to be more ready to change more quickly. So, top ways that nonprofits adopted, as you can see here on the right, increased private corporate grant submissions. So, just a lot more applications to private foundations, reduced or eliminated some programs, sad, but necessary in some cases, expanded individual donor outreach, staff and volunteer adjustments, which is in some ways, I think, in this survey, a fancy way of saying letting some people go, which is quite sad. And that's what you had, right? And you can see some folks did no changes, but only 2% said we made no changes to respond to this. So a lot of shifts across the board. Emergency response grants spiked. So once we saw trillion-dollar potential cuts to Medicaid and $186 billion to SNAP, it triggered immediate spikes in demand for food, housing, and health services, as you might expect. A lot of folks depend on these government services. So, in particular, community foundations did an outstanding job stepping up, and they often launched rapid response funds to alleviate the gap. In many cases, they were processed within 30 days of application, which is, as many of you know, is not the norm in this dynamic. There were some rapid response funders, big shout out to Ben and Jerry, that now specifically target grassroots with annual budgets under $1 million, usually over $350,000, so they know that it's sort of a large enough, meaningful organization. So thank you, Ben, and thank you, Jerry. What we saw here is that budget predicted funding outcomes, right? So there's a huge range. Larger organizations tend to get federal funding, smaller organizations don't. And so you can see this when we look at the median government funding in the organization's overall budget. Larger institutions capture the majority of government dollars. The biggest ones outperform the next year by more than 600%. Why? In many cases, budget is seen as a representation of administrative capacity and viewed as lower risk. It's also the case that, frankly, these folks are able to invest a lot more in excellent grant writing and excellent grant finding. So it's a you get bigger, you win more, you get bigger, and so on. It's a little bit of a flywheel effect there. You can see here the big question of were you awarded any federal grants in 2025? Of the extra large folks, again, I think these are over 100 million, 76.4 win, 61% of the very large win some, 66% of the large ones. Interesting to see that a little bit even larger than the very large ones. Medium down to 47, and then small, only 7% won any federal budgeting. Not that crazy, what you might expect. Budget predicted funding outcomes, right? So larger institutions dominate federal grants, but there's a catch here, and state and local grants provide the entry point for some smaller budgets, right? So you're much more likely to be winning a local or a state grant if you're a smaller organization than a federal. And we're about to get some actually really good news for smaller organizations, and I'll show you what that is in a moment. But there's a really big sort of tectonic shift in the way that government funding is happening this year. So we'll talk about that momentarily. But just keep that in mind. Federal success for small orgs, 6.8. Local success for small orgs, 32%, right? If your budget is under $1 million, you want to consider prioritizing these local grants before you focus on federal grants. AI, right? We had the massive shift, especially around governments. We had a shift in private foundations stepping up. And AI became the new norm for nonprofits and is probably the most important technology to happen to grant writing in at least 20 years. right? Very significant. Nearly 2 in 3 nonprofits used AI in 2025 for things like communication, productivity, developing, and fundraising. There are some key mistakes that nonprofits are making around AI. We'll talk about those in a bit. Yet very few foundation funders are talking to their fundees about AI, right? The foundations are using AI, the fundees are using AI, but there's no conversation between them about this, which is a little bit of a problem. Larger organizations still lead with AI adoption, right? So nonprofits with 12 plus staff or more than 2 million and foundations giving more than 12.5 million are much more likely to have staff with a solid understanding of AI than smaller organizations. Organizations above the median in staff size, in revenue or expenses, show higher interest in expanding AI use, right? As you might expect. And larger nonprofits and foundations are more likely to have formal AI use policies in place. Some key takeaways. 2025 was a shaky year for nonprofits, but the dust is beginning to settle. We have a clear avenue going forward. Data from last year shows us what we can expect in 2026. AI adoption is helping lean teams stay ahead in unpredictable, increasingly competitive funding environments while freeing up more time to focus on the mission and win more dollars. So that's super important. So, 2025. Wow. Let's talk about 2026. Deep breath. 2025. Congratulations on getting through it. Chaotic, challenging, difficult, really requiring innovation, requiring resourcefulness, requiring hard work, and requiring a lot of grit. And so you made it. We're here. What's going to happen in 2026? First, this is an incredibly big deal for small and medium organizations. So I want to focus on this for a moment. Federal funds are, in large part, moving to what we call block grants. Decentralization will be a major theme of 2026. Federal agencies are shifting from direct awards, meaning direct to nonprofits, to instead block grants, meaning the federal government sends a lump sum to the states, and then the states decide how to distribute it. Competition will be more local and sector specific as you compete for funds within your state instead of at the federal level across every nonprofit in the country, right? So this is a really big deal. Some key block grants for nonprofits in 2026. The Community Development Block Grant, housing, facilities, local infrastructure. This stuff really matters. It affects a lot of your work. It will be coming to more state and local and less federal in 2026. Community Services Block Grant, or CSBG, poverty alleviation, food security, emergency aid. Social Services Block Grant, childcare, elder care, disability services, more block grants, less coming directly from federal government. This is a really big deal. Is DC considered a state in this? Yes. Yes. So yes to DC. What else is happening? There is a big focus on workforce development and workforce programs. So the Trump administration will consolidate 11 workforce programs administered currently by the Department of Labor into a single funding stream for states called the Make America Skilled Again grant. And so those of you that are working on workforce development or adjacent to workforce development, you're going to see a lot of workforce development grants because there's a big emphasis on employment, right, under the Trump administration. And so you'll see more and more funding there. Billions and billions of dollars are expected to move through this block grant. When we get an exact amount, we will get it to you. The Department of Education has taken away a lot of its core program offices and put them in DOL, HSS, HHS, Interior, and the State Department. For nonprofits, this means that maybe the grant changes, your target agency changes, and your reporting portal might change as well. So what's happening? Lots of funding, lots of shifting. So we have to be ready and agile. And we have to keep an eye out on all the grants that are becoming available. You with me so far? Lots of stuff happening in 2026. I hope this is okay. And yes, a couple of questions about whether the slides will be sent out. We will send out the slides and the recording. We strongly encourage you to share this with other folks in your organization. Trend 3, funders will expect collaboration. So some government grants, there's a G missing there. It's probably my fault in the editing, but some government grants will prioritize consortium bids. These are partnerships between small community-based orgs and larger fiscal agents, and many larger federal grants are restricted to a predefined list of entities, right? So it means only these entities can apply. And how do you get in if you're not one of those? Well, you're going to have to think about being a sub-grantee, right? So you'll work with those organizations to deliver a portion of the program, And that's how you get some of this funding, right? This will allow you to provide this. While that larger partner, by the way, will handle the federal audit, the reporting requirements, and other stuff, and usually take a percentage of overall what they give you. Private foundations, on top of the government, are also increasingly prioritize multi-org grants for efficiency and scale. So by funding one collaborative project instead of five individual ones, foundations report a higher rate of return per dollar invested. This is a trend that has been going on for a while and seems to be accelerating and showing no signs of slowing down. So you're going to see a lot of collaboration. We really think about how do we get a couple of orgs applying for grants together. In 2025, 60% of nonprofits responded to increased demand by doing more collaboration, which is honestly a wonderful thing for the nonprofit sector. The nonprofit sector doesn't have some of the market forces that drive consolidation that the private sector does, and yet you can often create more returns on your own investment and your own impact by collaborating a lot more. So funders will expect this, right? When we ask nonprofits, right, how are they doing this? 60% uh, initiated more collaborations with community members, diversified revenue streams, increased advocacy, launch new programs, right? How do they react to all of the funding shifts? So there's a lot. Collaboration is one of the number one tactics that people are doing. And again, it's sort of a virtuous cycle. So more collaboration, more funding for collaborations, funders get more excited about this, nonprofits get better at collaborating, and so on and so forth, and you end up with a lot more. When I look forward 5 years in grant writing, which is always a dangerous thing to do, I would anticipate significantly more collaboration in 2031 than you see in 2026, even though you'll see a lot more in 2026 than you would in 2021, right? So these things all happen. Trend four, private foundations are ready for a record year. Now, there's two big things that matter in terms of how much private foundations are giving. One, how much they want to give. Two, how much money they have, right? And how much money they have is largely dependent on the stock market. So strong market performance in recent year has increased the value of many private foundation endowments. As endowments grow, foundations are required to distribute more to meet or exceed the 5% payout rule. Higher asset values give foundations more flexibility to increase grant making without compromising long-term sustainability. 5% of more is more, right? 5% of less is less. And so when you see double-digit growth in the S&P 500 for the third consecutive year, this is, by the way, the same reason donor advised funds are up, stock giving is up, IRA giving, called qualified charitable distributions, these are all up. Cash giving, not that important, right? So think about the role that this plays. When markets go up, think about what does this mean for my funders, whether they're individual or private, and who has more money than they used to because of this. And private foundations are the number one. Now, we've also seen what else? That a lot of folks are upping their giving because of some of the pullback at the federal level. So Foundation Mark projects that foundation giving will increase 5 to 7% over 2025, which was already a very big year. That means that between 118 and 122 billion dollars will be given from private foundations to operating nonprofits in 2026. At the end of Q3 2025, private foundations held an incredible $1.83 trillion in total financial assets. That number is likely to have gone up significantly in Q4, which was another strong market performance quarter. And you can see here, I mean, just take a look at this before we continue. Let's just sort of meditate on this graph for a moment. This is total financial assets held by private foundations. And what you can see here, as we get to 2025, it's over 1.8 trillion. Now let's go back to 2008, 2009. It's less than a third of that, right? It's 600 in about 2007. You see that dip. Remember, those of you that were working in 2008, remember how bad that was. And then gradual uptick, right? This sort of long trend is up and to the right here. But look at how much bigger it is. I mean, it's only what, 2019 that we're half of where we are today. And now there's no signs of slowing down here either. And so you might expect in another 7 years that we're doubling again. This is why it becomes so important to get really good at grant applications and grant management, because this is an area of growth, right? It's all going in one direction. You have some bad economic years, you take a tiny dip, and then the good economic years, you have a big gain. Tiny dips, big gain, tiny dips, big gain. And so you end up with this overall long-term growth. Again, right? This is an enormous opportunity for nonprofits, especially as organizations increase giving. As one example, through the Level Up Pledge, organizations like the MacArthur Foundation, thanks for all your great work, MacArthur, committed to a 20% increase in grant making or an 8% plus payout, directing flexible funding, which is so valuable to impacted communities. Private funders are also more likely than government funders to provide general support grants and multi-year grants, right? More flexibility for you so you can use your own judgment on where it's most needed. But there's a big downside to all this, right? Private foundations off the charts, more giving, less federal, more focus on private. What does that mean? A little bit more competition with other nonprofits. 87% of foundation leaders observed a rise in grant funding in 2025 over 2024, even though they gave up more in order to totally make up for some of the government grants. Private foundations would have to increase their grant making by 282%. Now, long term, they will, right? But how long are we? Probably 13 years from 282% higher than we are today, maybe 15, maybe 17. So they're awarding more volume, but government grants are often fewer awards at higher amounts. So now we're moving to we have to win many more grants to make up the same amount, but they're out there. And so there's some strategic decisions to make. I mean, just give you a sense. How big are the largest awards? What's the median? Well, $300,000 from government, 25,000 from donor advised funds here, 25K from corporate, 36 from community foundations, 75 from private foundations, 55 from other nonprofits, 100,000 from other sources. So you have to win more grants to make up for a lack of a federal grant that you might have lost. But there's bad news. Excuse me, there's good news, right? There's more funding available. There's bad news. There's more competition. There's good news. It's actually easier now to apply to more grants. And so things like AI use will continue to grow exponentially. 90% of nonprofits are interested in expanding AI use in 2026, and I frankly don't understand what's going on with the other 10%. 80% of grant applications in 2026 will include some use of AI. Let's say this again. 80% of grant applications in 2026 will include some use of AI. I want to tell you about one of the most interesting conversations I had in 2025. I went to Baltimore. I got to see some of you in Baltimore, and I went to the a big grants conference in Baltimore. And I think this was in October. It might have been September, but if you were there, it was great to see you. And I gave a presentation on AI and grant writing. And a couple of folks said two things, right? I had this conversation several times with people. They said one, this is a grant summit, by the way. Thank you, Sharon. It just came to my mind. One, they said, well, first of all, it was an awesome presentation. And I don't always get this, so I'm happy to say this was an awesome one. They're not all awesome. Awesome presentation. Second, if you had come here last year given the same presentation, the pitchforks would have been out for you, right? The grant world was super anti-AI in 23, 24. Then what happened is they started using it in their personal lives and other professional lives, and now it's a can't miss element. And so it's interesting to watch that sort of rapid changing culture that we're seeing across all industries and across a lot of parts of the nonprofit sector. So it was really, really interesting. I'm glad that I had to get pitchforked in 2024, and I'm glad that it was so well received in 2025. Nonprofit AI use will expand beyond basic tasks to supporting grant discovery, proposal structuring, data synthesis, compliance. Compliance is so important to help teams apply for more funding without adding staff. Teams that resist AI will fall behind. Look, if nonprofit A is applying for 11 grants and those grants are excellent, they're all compliant because we triple checked it. They're doing deep listening to what the funder is looking for, and they're navigating it by using AI to help create great starts, and then they're using their humans for excellent judgment and reviewing, right? AI suggestions, human judgment, great. And then nonprofit B is applying to 4 in the same amount of time, and they might be making a mistake on compliance, and maybe their language is more boilerplate because they're copying the same thing and they're not adjusting all of it to each funder. They're going to lose a lot more money and they're going to fall behind nonprofit A. And so that's really the choice that a lot of folks are making in 2026. What else is happening? Trend 7, funders are formalizing AI use, right? Funders are actively embracing AI themselves for all the same reason nonprofits are using them. 81% of foundations are experimenting with AI. As AI use accelerates, many funders will move to formalize expectations through AI policies. And foundations like MacArthur Foundation are in the early stages of developing an AI grant making strategy to use AI to speed up grant making and get money out faster so you can put it to use even faster. What else is happening? Nonprofits are craving more direction and more support from funders on AI use, but very few, right? Again, there's this big divide. Funders are using AI, fundees are using AI, but they're not chatting about it in between. What do fundees want support with? General AI education, right? Funding to access AI tools, technical training for staff, resources on how the use of AI affects the people and communities they serve, right? This is really, really interesting stuff across the board. We expect one of our predictions for 2026 is a lot more conversations about AI between funders and fundees. What else is happening, right? So when we survey funders and we look at, hey, are you helping at all with AI implementation? 90% say no, 80% say a couple, 2% say most, or some, 1% say most, 1% say all. So it's mostly 90%, mostly no support at all. That is one of the big themes that will change in 2026. You can bank on it. When we come see you again in 2027 for the same session, looking forward to 2027, hopefully we'll say, yeah, we were right here. 91% of funders believe AI will positively transform philanthropy, a really positive view on this. Corporate social responsibility and grant making within 3 years, right? So there's actually a lot more optimism, frankly, among grant makers than there might be sometimes around grant seekers. Why? AI helps smaller organizations and particularly non-native speakers, which I think is really undervalued as a key here, right? If you are um, an organization where your staff predominantly don't speak English as a first language and didn't have 13 years of schooling or 15 or 18 years of schooling in written English, it's just going to be harder for you than the folks who are elite writers because they've had so much more time writing English. And yet AI can close the gap almost immediately. Extremely few funders, and we were basically hearing of none in the last 6 months, are rejecting AI outright, and we assume this number will go to zero. Of course, always review funders' AI policies if they have them, although frankly, most funders do not have any. Trend 8, scouting will happen before you even submit. So institutional donors are now independently verifying organizational credibility by scouting LinkedIn profiles, website transparency, social media, before they're even reviewing your application. Oh, it came in from, uh, you know, Austin Land Trust. Let's go see what we need to learn about Austin Land Trust before we read the grant application. This puts higher stakes on some of your other work. Digital signals of capacity, which means clear impact metrics, active leadership presence, recent updates. These will be considered a proxy for organizational readiness. Really, really important. And by the way, it's easier than ever to have a great website. So that's some of the trends. We've got some time. We're going to dive in on some very practical tips to make you unbelievably good at grants this year, and ideally far better than you were in 2025, even if you were great in 2025. Or some of you will say, this is the year that we're going to break into grant funding. And so hopefully this will give you some avenues to think about that. One, know where to search, right? So block grant opportunities often do not appear on grants.gov, which is where you've been hanging out for the better part of the last 2 decades. Most states use centralized portals, excuse me. Identify the state agency that manages your sector. Is it the Arts Council? Is it the Department of Energy? Is it the Department of Ag? Right? And go hunt those down. At the municipal level, for community development funds, check with the city hall, check with the city commission, right? Bonus tip, there's something called sam.gov assistance listings to see which state agency in your areas receive the block grant you are targeting, right? So go check that out, go figure out where the money is, and then go hunt down those opportunities. Here's an example in my birth state of New Jersey. Shout out to anyone here in Bergen County or Glen Rock, New Jersey. Great places. And you can see here, this is where some of the grants have come from, and this is across the way. Nancy says Ridgewood. Ridgewood is where I was born and lived until I was 3 years old. So great to see you, Nancy. Maplewood, Teaneck, Bergen County, originally in Garfield. All right. Uh, this makes me really happy, by the way. Okay, let's go back to searching for funds. We'll talk about Northern New Jersey later. Know where to search for opportunities. So private funders, regional grant making associations, giving circles, directories, open opportunities. These are really big to look at. Foundations often announce new initiatives via local press release rather than on their own websites, which is super annoying. It's so hard. Put it on your website, funders, but we still have to look at this. So we're going to do things like set up a Google alert for your city, plus grant, plus foundation, plus your sector, right? Bergen County and Ridgewood and Grant and Foundation and hospitals, right? Put that all in there. Um, there's also a wonderful tool that, full disclosure, we are working on as part of FreeWill called Grant Assistant. Grant Assistant has a component called Discover, which is AI grant discovery. It's awesome. It's the future of grant discovery. Go check it out. We'll put some notes in the survey in case you want to see a demo later. You can always go to grantassistant.ai and check that out as well. And you can find the best fit funding opportunities in seconds, which is frankly awesome. Tip two, understand the funder's priorities. Every government entity must publish a plan on how they will spend the funds. This is released before the application window. So the plan shows up before we start taking applications, so you have time to prep. First, let's make sure the project aligns with the state priorities. Really understand the state's priorities, right? Uh, you can go look at the website. Also, go figure out if there's any speeches that any of these officials have given about the priorities. An example is the Community Service Block Grant State Plan for New Jersey. You can go check that out when we send around the slides. You can use their exact evaluation criteria and language to tailor your narrative to hit these high priority categories, right? If you do education and workforce development and the whole grant's about workforce development, talk a lot more about workforce development, right? And use some of the language, readiness for the future, readiness for a changing economy, whatever it may be, small business growth, right? Use those catchphrases and keywords in your application. Uh, so many people are focused on grant writing, they forget about the deep listening that has to happen before the writing starts. And that's exactly what this is. For private foundations, use tools like grantmakers.io or ProPublica to see who they funded, how much, and what areas. If an organization has never made a grant over $100,000 and you put in an application for $1 million, it's probably not going to happen, right? So look at what similar work has been done. You can use your favorite AI tool to synthesize this data instantly, upload relevant documents and ask, tell me what funder name prioritized last year and how it aligns with our mission. So you can start to see some connections that you might have missed otherwise. Tip three, I think this is three. Yes, tip three, go beyond the printed guidelines. So states and municipalities must hold public hearings to solicit project ideas before the grant cycle starts. This is an incredible hack that a lot of people don't think about. So I want everyone to just, you're probably eating lunch, you might be doing something else. Zero in for 10 seconds here because I think this is super interesting. This is an idea that my friend and colleague Kara came up with, and I think it's really important. So we're holding public hearings and soliciting project ideas before the grant cycle starts. So show up and say, hey, the thing that we do is actually the most important thing you should be funding. And then, by the way, when that gets listened to, and then you later apply for it, boy, you're a lot more likely to win, right? So this pre-advocacy is a really important thing. States often offer free workshops. You can attend them and ask questions. You can also get to know the people who are likely reviewing the grants. Say, hey, what are you most excited about funding this year? What are you most nervous about? Is there anything particular you're looking to avoid? Have those conversations over coffee at these workshops, right? Private foundations are relationship driven, even when they pretend they're not. And before applying, look at their board of directors. Look at your board of directors. Are they connected at all? Right? Are there other avenues where you can have some conversations before you apply? Big, big, big moments. Eligibility does not mean you're going to win. Eligibility answers the basic question: can we apply? Fit answers the more important one: is this a strategic use of our time and capacity? As pressure to apply for more grants increases, make sure you are applying for opportunities that clearly align with your mission and programs. Avoid simply chasing the funds. You can diversify your funding sources. Your best defense against uncertainty and increased competition is to avoid relying on a single funding source. Your revenue mix should include things like individual giving, obviously, foundations, government, corporate if you can. Don't forget things like planned giving. Don't forget things like earned income models. So if you're only grant focused, you are more prone to government shocks than folks who are more diversified. This is really important. We have a tool that, again, will be linked from the deck when we send it around called the Funder Mix Insight. So you can understand, hey, how are we funded compared to how are similar organizations like ours of our size and sector funded? And maybe that will spark some new thinking. So that's free for you. We'll send that around after as well. Okay, look, sometimes less is more. This is a case where more is more. To win more funding, you need more at-bats, right? The number one determinant of how many hits you get in a season is how many times you get up to the plate. Set a goal to increase grant applications by 50% this year. Some of you are thinking, what? That's so much. Do it. It really, really matters, and you'll get more funding. Last year, 95% of organizations submitting 6+ applications received at least some funding. 100% of organizations submitting 31, which, boy, that's a lot, won at least one award. This is really important if you're a small organization. You can see, by the way, if you apply for one, 67% got it, and how that goes up over time. So get on it, right? And now what it means is think about what is our actual plan to increase our grant applications. Remember, of course, that more applications doesn't automatically equal better outcomes. You still need to do it when there's a strong fit and strong readiness, which means finding more opportunities in the first place. Chasing low alignment opportunities wastes time, it wastes staff capacity, and it can be ultimately be demoralizing. Thankfully, AI is here to help out. And so now you can make strategic volume possible by accelerating grant discovery. Discovery is often the blocker in applying for more grants, and fit assessment, and then obviously writing more and making sure you're doing the right compliance checks. The risk when you do more is you make a couple of dumb mistakes and all that hard work gets undone because you missed one key component of eligibility or compliance. Dominique says shoot for 1 to 2 applications per week. Good on you, Dominique. That is intense, right? We have to normalize safe AI use across our team. So yes, we need to use more AI, but there's one mistake that everyone's making, and it really hurts my soul. What is that mistake? Most teams are using your personal AI accounts. This means the organization has no control or visibility over uploaded data. You might have privacy issues, you might have security issues, and by the way, turnover in the sector is high. So if your grant writers are using their personal accounts and then they leave, all of that built up knowledge is gone. You want to be using team manager enterprise AI accounts. You want to train staff on safe practices and offboarding protocols. When you leave, this is what you have to delete from your personal accounts. You want to feed your AI with trusted sources and past proposals. You want to create an AI policy use document. You want to have clear guidelines you can share with funders. This will build trust and accountability. You will help set industry standards for intentional AI use. And you can download our template because we've already made it for you because we know you're busy and we know you're not sure where to start. In some cases, some of you are already ahead of the game. So we have that for you as well because we put the work in. And as a bonus tip, we really love our team at FreeWill hosts bi-weekly office hours where we just hang out and people show what they're working on and how they're using it. We ask questions, we exchange prompts, workflows, new tools. It's just fun. It's just fun, right? So come do that. Well, you're not invited to those are internal, but do those at your organization and have this sort of bi-weekly learning. It's really fun. And by the way, the people that are crushing it on AI and really changing the way they work and leading the organization, to be honest, are not the ones I expected. They're not the ones I thought of as particularly tech savvy. They weren't necessarily the most innovative before, but they're curious and they're doing great work and they're making their own lives better and then they can share it. And some of the efficacy gains at FreeWill have been off the charts. I mean, it's just wild to see, all while making sure it's safe and protected and thoughtful. So super interesting there. Tip 8, going back to this pre-scouting, you have to own your online impression, right? It's 2026. You gotta have a great online presence. On LinkedIn, right? If you're posting content about the great work you're doing, with great pictures in particular, it's gonna prime the brain of the judges to do that. You need to have a candidate and charity navigator profiles. These are non-negotiable for any organization over like $150,000 a year at this point. Please make sure you have fresh financial data. Please make sure you're trustworthy there. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it, even with a great grant application. You want a fully functional website. You want board and leadership profiles to signal government strength. There are real humans behind this. There are trustworthy people behind this. Impact data and financial reports should be easily accessible. Remember how much funding is coming from these foundations. Think about them as a potential audience on your website. You want to show live or frequently updated KPIs. As an example, 1,200 meals served this month, 85% graduation rate, whatever it is, right? Make sure that's on there. And you want to make digital giving seamless and intuitive. Some of these folks will give out of their own pockets as well. Tip 9, stay audit and application ready. Be ready for audits. These are going to happen. Compliance checks. Make sure you have your fiscal tracking systems in place. Ensure your data tracking systems are prepared for the application phase and the ongoing reporting requirements. Use 2026 as the year to increase internal capacity for navigating this because we have a more competitive environment than we ever have. So it becomes more important than it ever has. We want to update these documents in Q1 so we're ready for the rest of the year. A couple short application windows. Do we have a mission and vision statement and is it up to date? Do we have a strategic plan or a logic model and is it up to date? Do we have program descriptions and are they up to date? Do we have past winning grant proposals that we can use to base new grant proposals on? Do we have approved budgets and are they up to date? Is our financial audit and a 990 and is that up to date? Do we have impact and evaluation reports and are they up to date, right? If you have all these, you're then in an amazing position across the board. Is our org chart, staff bios? If someone says, oh, I see Nancy works there, let me go check with Nancy and see how she thinks about the organization. And Nancy left 6 months ago, that means your website's out of date and you're not as trustworthy an organization. Letters of support or testimonials, other folks saying you do great work is a great way to convince people that you do great work. Tip 10, partnerships. Relationships matter. What matters more in the age of AI than ever before? Human relationships, right? So collaboration, your partnership create a solution that neither of you could have achieved alone. There are organizations that you have no idea how you might work with. It makes a lot of sense to go have coffee with them in January, in February, in March, right? Just get to know these folks. As an example, a youth mental health nonprofit plus a school district deliver in-school counseling, right? Remember, the best partnerships are formed 3 to 6 months before the application window, and you can start to brainstorm and have these conversations in advance. Name the partnership, the Newark Youth Health Collective, to make a tangible entity for the funder. I love naming things in ways that seem aspirational and excellent. Oh my gosh, the Newark Youth Health Collective, and I'm a Newark funder who cares about youth. Heck yes, I want to give you this money, right? I mean, think about that work. And then you list the nonprofits underneath, right? That is an extremely compelling pitch and very exciting. Bonus tip, look for your sub-grant opportunities. Here's the folks that are eligible for some of the block grants, right? You can see how much they got in year one. Let's go talk to the folks who got a lot of money, right? Camden, uh, Norwiscap, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, United Community Corporation. Hey, what are you working on? Are you looking for subgrantees? What are the areas you're focused on? Go have those conversations, right? These are great folks to learn from. Here's the example. And as a law, the state must pass through at least 90% of its total funding to local organizations. And these are the eligible entities. Your options are apply to the 5% discretionary pot, which is super tiny, or go be a subgrantee, right? So both, probably both, but subgrantees really matter. Okay, we'll go through this as well. All right, that's what's happening in 2026 in grant funding. We promise it's going to be mostly correct, and maybe the world is going to change in some radical ways that we don't expect, but we will keep you updated if that happens. So, pausing for a second, we are dropping a survey in the chat right now. If you would like to get The Lost Bookshop, this is your moment, right? Great book, fun read, super escapey, just lovely. By Evie Woods, 20 People as a Gift. If you don't find out, feel free to get it at a local bookshop. Make a note of the survey if you'd like a chance to get a copy. Next, Thursday at noon, also available to RSVP in the survey. We are going to do a demonstration of the future of grant writing. This is a tool called Grant Assistant. Some of you have seen in the past. It has a whole bunch of upgrades, and it's really excellent at using AI to help you find grant opportunities. There's a whole bunch of grant opportunities, meaning thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, that have been hand researched by humans, hand evaluated by humans with the help of technology that may not exist anywhere else. And so the ability to help you find and then win new grants. And then there's AI grant writing and AI grant compliance, all built in this grant assistant package. So if you are interested in potentially using this, come. If you are not interested in potentially using it, but you want to learn how the future of grant writing is changing even more and looking at technology, come anyway. It's going to be fun. It's going to be half an hour. It is at noon Eastern in 2 days. So it's 47 hours from right now. Come hang out with us. No pressure. Have fun. Bring your lunch. Bring your snacks. Bring your friends, and we'll check this out. What else? Oh, guess what? We started doing this last week. We have a bunch of stuff scheduled already. I'm so excited about this. I can't wait to do them. We are giving away 5 free consults on 2026 strategy with me. Hey, I think about 2026 strategy. I think about tax changes. I think about foundations adjustments. I think about politics. I think about the economy all the time. And I get to talk with thousands of organizations every year, which is such a blessing for me. And so I have a particularly interesting, not particularly interesting, but a particularly broad view of nonprofit strategies because maybe you're a church in Oregon and you hang out with other churches in Oregon, and maybe you occasionally hang out with churches in Idaho, or maybe you're an animal shelter in Texas and you get to talk to other animal shelters in Texas and around the country, but you might not know some super cool stuff that Ivy League schools have come up with, or that hospitals in Florida have come up with, or that orchestras in Michigan have. So we're going to get to bring a bunch of those ideas and tailor them specifically to your organization. Sometimes people are like, hey, is this trying to sell me something? Nope. These are just let's go hang out and let's talk about how you might hit all your fundraising goals in 30 minutes. So just to be extra clear and transparent up front, that's what that is. Drop a note in the survey uh, if you'd like to do them, and then we'll pick five, right? I would love to do one for each of the 1,457 people on the call right now, but I'm too busy for that. So please forgive me if you don't get this, but we're going to give away more of these over the course of the year. Next steps. Next webinar, February 3rd. So 2 weeks from now, I get to do two awesome speaking events in the next 2 weeks, which are offline, which I'm very much looking forward to. One with a bunch of Lutheran colleges, which I'm super looking forward to. If you'll be there, can't wait to hang out with you. And one with something called the Foundation for Fraternal Excellence, which is a whole bunch of fraternities and sororities fundraising for all their important work around the country. Super excited to see you all. So if you are going to be in Palm Springs or Cabo in the next 2 weeks for one of those things, shoot me a note. I can't wait to see you. Um, if you need anything else at all, shoot me an email, patrick@freewill.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to post some regular content, at least every week or two, mostly about what's happening in real time. So, hey, this is happening in the world. Turns out we're now in a fight with Europe. Turns out it's affecting stock giving. What's that going to mean for foundations? What's that going to mean for, stock market? What's that going to mean for giving? How do we think about some of this stuff? Uh, what does the tax changes mean for donor advised funds? What does that mean for giving right now? We talk about that stuff on the regular. And we post more about it on LinkedIn because we don't want to blast everybody with too many emails, even though we probably send you a lot of emails already. But hopefully they're all super useful because they're about things like that. Okay, so that is our session for today. We are going to wrap up a little bit early, partly because you can see my voice is going, partly because we've just covered so much and you have a lot to do. Um, Susan asks, are we still doing the recorded minute updates? So we are doing what we call a free minute. We're doing this monthly, which is basically what are all the things that happened in the last month? How are they affecting giving? What should you do about it? That'll be on LinkedIn and via email. We stopped doing them weekly. It just felt like too much email for everybody. So that's a little bit of an update there. We'll also do some occasional ones on LinkedIn only if there's particularly interesting news. So LinkedIn is that way. It's just we try to be thoughtful and cautious with your email inbox because you get so many of these things. Okay, last things. Have a wonderful week. Hope to see you all Thursday. Hope that you are enjoying the snow, sunshine, rain. Uh, you know, hopefully if you're in Indiana, you're having a big party uh, this week. And generally, just we're so grateful for everything you all are doing. We're so grateful that you choose to spend time with us. It just means a lot, and it really encourages us to put in extra work on this, which then makes you choose to do it more, which then makes us put even more work. And particularly shout outs to my colleague Phoebe, who always takes the lead on webinars, and particularly my colleague Kara, who is wonderful, and I will say a fellow Mets fan, so I'm extra grateful to Kara for that, who put in the bulk of the work on grants because she is one of the smartest people we have on grant strategy. And so thank you, Kara. Thank you, Phoebe, as always. Thank you to the rest of the FreeWill team. And we will see you all. See you on Thursday. So see you Thursday. Come with questions, bring some food, snacks. We'll just hang out. And looking forward to that as well.